All right, here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Grande Bouffe.
The big feast.
With myself, Cole Smithey, and my co-host, Mike Lacy, and this week's special co-host, the handsomest man in craft beer, Adam Zuniga.
Cole, thank you for such an introduction.
Welcome, Adam. How's it going, man?
Glad to be here.
I'm really happy that you're here now because you brought us this delightful bottle of Firestone Walker Parabola. Did I say that right?
Yes, indeed.
Oh, tell us about this beer, Adam.
The Firestone Parabola. This is a 2015 edition, so it's pre-Duvel buyout. Although there are, of course, worse things than being bought out by Duvel, but it's a Russian Imperial Stout. It clocks in about 14%. It's bourbon barrel aged. Yeah, so it is definitely a Sharon bottle. I knew there'd be at least three of us.
What's most wine at? Is it
Wine kind of hovers or starts around 13-14%.
Okay.
So yeah.
So I noticed that it's just Firestone. It's not Firestone Walker. What's the story behind that?
Oh, no, it's like Firestone and Firestone Walker. It's one and the same.
It's one and the same. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In this case, yeah. So it is black and rich as your soul, Cole.
I like it. Let's get a toast on that.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah. Oh man, I love.
Nice to meet you.
love
nice
this.
to meet you, man.
Yep. Here we go.
Wow.
That is a very, very nice way to start this podcast. I'm already a little tipsy just from that one sip.
What were you drinking when I walked in?
We were drinking a sea salt ale from Fire Island.
It's definitely less intense.
Nice. From one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good thing we started with the low ABV.
Yeah.
Yeah, so teach me how to talk about a beer, because I just think sometimes of, I know it's a terrible approach, but colors,
Yeah, just
random taste.
talk about this beer. Adam.
Give me the sort of like, I feel like there has to be like a grid, you know?
We know
absolutely.
that you're a Cicerone judge.
It's all true. Advanced Cicerone, BJCP judge.
Nice.
He does weddings and bar mitzvahs.
which is no small feat, I know, because my wife is a Cicerone, and I remember helping her study to get and that's just the basic Cicerone, the first level Cicerone part.
Absolutely. Your wife, Catherine, and I, we actually took our certified Cicerone exams at roughly the same time.
Oh,
so
wow. Oh, cool.
All in good company. But there's endless ways to masturbate over beer now. It's, you can talk and talk and talk, but you really just
And
want to
they'll all get you fired in Hollywood now.
Yeah.
It's true.
But not in politics. Not in politics.
And beer in Hollywood's not okay. Politics still acceptable. But you just want to reduce it to the most basic sensory elements. So it's like, first and foremost, what do you see when you look at this? Mm-hmm. What do you smell? Mm-hmm. What do you taste? And there's a lot you can really determine about a beer on first glance. Mm-hmm. So when I say it's black as coal, what am I talking about there? They're clearly using a lot of dark, roasted chocolate malts, which has been like very kilned and charred to a high temperature to give it both color and flavor.
Now, is chocolate used as an analogy?
It's used as an analogy just to signify a degree to which the grain has been burnt, essentially. It certainly doesn't taste like chocolate when you take a handful of it into your mouth. It tastes like char and ash. But combine that with a variety of different malts that are roasted and killed to different degrees. And what do you taste? There are elements of chocolate, I think, in the beer. There's elements of coffee. There's elements of ash. There's elements of marshmallow. So it has a nice, very, I'd say, subtly smoky, charred, and sweet flavor all at once. No hop character in a beer like this, obviously. It's an imperial stout. It's only there for maybe the tip of balance and bitterness, but it's really not a dominant flavor. When you smell it, what's on the nose? What's it?
It is
The barrel, right?
so like a wood scent, you're saying?
It's been aged in a bourbon barrel, so it's
The bourbon.
it's hot, right? Like
Yeah.
I think offhand, you know that this is a bit of a beast. Like you're definitely dipping into some alcohol.
So
here.
that's where the ABV is coming from, is from literally from the barrels that...
Well, it was brewed to a high ABV to begin with. But it picked up an additional, maybe like an additional 1 or 2% of alcohol aging it in the barrel, but it also kind of picks up just kind of the flavor quality of the bourbon.
And so this is 2015.
Yep.
And so how what's the story on the aging? Is this beer going to be good for a long time, or does it have a shelf life?
So, I don't know. Do you have a beer cellar in your New York City apartment? Mine's my closet, basically. So, it was released in 2015. I mean, if we look at the bottle, maybe it says like how long, I don't know. Sometimes they tell you how long it was actually aged, but the bottle itself was released in 2015. I'm sure it lived in the barrels for at least a year.
Okay.
And it's been in my closet ever since. But because it's a higher ABV beer, you can think of alcohol as protective in this sense, right? Like it's going to help to preserve it over time and kind of ward off any unwanted flavors. And likewise, the alcohol, which is increasingly hot when it's first bottled, starts to settle and mellow out a little bit over time as well. So a 14% beer, that's why they say generally whenever a beer is first released from the brewery, you want to drink it fresh is best. But the higher the ABV, the more preservative qualities it has, the more it will actually evolve over time.
It'll evolve.
Wow. So it will become finer.
Like a liquor, like a cognac or something that you're looking for it to be 5, 10, 20
is there
years
an ideal time, 10 years? Is there, do you know that?
It'll continue to change and mature. It's just a matter of kind of what went into the bottle in the first place. And when you taste it now, like what are some of the dominant flavors? You just kind of hot on the nose and boozy. Does that come through in the flavor? What do you think?
No, it's a really interesting contrast of sweet and bitter.
Yeah, I almost feel like a cooked, like kind of like a cherry taste.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an excellent descriptor.
Yeah.
And there's no wrong answer. I mean, we could talk endlessly about something like this, but the booze isn't overwhelming. It's definitely present. It's definitely
really
kind of warming.
smooth.
It's smooth.
Yeah, it's a great holiday beer. Like, I feel like it's Thanksgiving already. Thanksgiving's not for another week, but it feels like, Thanksgiving right now.
Yeah. Going into winter and the holidays, perfect time of year for this kind of beer. And the cherry that you taste, kind of the chocolate and the marshmallow and the char elements that I mentioned, like the black licorice, the black currant, we could go on and on, but all those elements are there.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I love about someone who's helping you understand these flavors is I take a sip of this, and we've done 80 episodes, and I'm trying to get better at describing the beer. But when someone tells you, here are the ways to understand it, and also here are some flavors off the top of my head, what I'm feeling, you suddenly can taste that, and it's like, it's been there, and it emerges for you.
But this is also probably the most complex beer that I think we've had on the podcast.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
And never forget power of suggestion. When you're in a room of beer nerds and beer geeks waxing on and off, right? Generally what someone says, they put it out in the ether, and that's often what you'll taste. So I want to emphasize again, it's open to interpretation. There's no wrong answer. But again, you can look at a beer, you can smell a beer and get a pretty good idea of what it's going to taste like.
Well, this one certainly came in a fancy box, and it's got a fancy label, and I'm a big fan of Imperials to begin with. So this is a really nice bottle right here.
Well, when it comes to taking things apart and talking about what you see, I think that's a great pivot point to talk about some movies, because I think there's a lot of similarity between taking apart a movie and taking apart a beer. If you tell me you hate a movie, love a movie, it starts to skew the way that I interpret it, and we have quite a fun, I'll call it a Mike Nichols B-side in the best, most loving way.
I don't think it's a B-side. I think it's an A-side.
I think it's a hidden hit. I think it was one of those where it was
this movie was a big deal. I was 8 years old when this movie came out, and Catherine and I just watched it last night, and I remember when I was a little kid hearing carnal knowledge, and I didn't even know what carnal meant, but I knew that, that's an adult movie,
right?
And I've wanted to see this movie all this time, and Adam was kind enough to let me choose the movie that we would discuss this week, and I give a walking tour of Carnegie Hill, and so I've been on a Art Garfunkel tear because he lives just 3 blocks down.
Wow!
But on 87th Street between
we
Park
should
and
have had
Lex.
2 guests.
I know we could have had Mr. Garfunkel come in and talk about it. But so anyway, so this is a movie that I'm really, really excited to talk about.
Thank you for introducing me to it and for sharing. When I first heard Carnal Knowledge, I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought we might be watching some like softcore Cinemax together.
That does sound like we watch a lot of Lars von Trier movies that are like, well, it's technically yes, this is pornography, but it is also
of the intellectual kind.
It's
of
your
course.
mind is being fucked. That's,
It's art, right? First and foremost art, second of all, porn.
David, when you saw the elements that went into this movie, which is
Adam.
I'm sorry, Adam. This thing is hitting me.
I know.
This thing is hitting me.
We'll see when you get to the end of it.
Yeah. What stuck out on you? Was it Art Garfunkel? Did you know that he ever acted?
I didn't know Art Garfunkel was such an accomplished actor. It's a little strange for me to see Jack Nicholson at so many different phases of life. And I guess Mike Nichols, his specialty is kind of awkward sexual situations. Is that fair to say, maybe?
I think so.
Mike Nichols has a really rich history. He did a lot of comedy stuff with Elaine May in the late 50s and 60s before he transitioned into filmmaking. And also, this is the script is written by Jules Feiffer, who was an editorial cartoonist. So the movie has a really rich pedigree, and one of the things that I found interesting about it is that it really works as a play. I could see this being on Broadway right now.
I've thought of staging this, honestly, and it was I don't believe it was written as a play, but absolutely could have been.
It could work as a play so easily.
And speaking of his origin with Nichols and May, you go back and you watch those sketches, and it's usually a man and a woman who have not necessarily a romantic relationship. So they were like a sketch duo. They would be on the Mike Douglas show. It was real early.
Yeah.
And they had this
Love the Mike Douglas show.
this comedic play off each other and these types of relationships that they're just funny little bits, but they had this nuance to them that you still never see in just like sketch comedy, and you really see it on the screen in so many of his movies, including The Graduate, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. That's Mike Nichols too. And what made me watch this movie is I had done those two, and then I had watched Catch-22, also with Art Garfunkel. And I found out that he made this movie, and I watched this back in high school when Netflix used to send these weird circle-shaped things to your house.
Oh, I still get those. I just put one in the mail today.
The what?
I vaguely remember
that
those.
DVD.
In what did you do? You put it in the what?
In that mailbox on the corner.
Well, you can't put it in the female box? Yeah, mail. Oh, yeah.
The Shai box.
So Jules Feiffer was a Pulitzer Prize, or is a Pulitzer Prize winner and Oscar-winning cartoonist and playwright. He was born in 1929. So, you get that right away from the writing. This movie, it has a timelessness about it. I really like all the opening stuff where they're going. Catherine was explaining to me about the college that they're going to, how it's not quite Ivy League. And so it's this.
That's a great way to fuck up someone's ego, is to almost go to the Ivy League.
And because of the way the story, when you watch it, you think, oh, these guys, they looked a little bit too old for college. But when you realize that they're covering 30 years in the movie, it comes to life. It really enables these characters to come to life. And Candice Bergen is just so beautiful and great. The whole opening of the movie it's so intriguing because you've got these two best friends that effectively going after the same girl. And they don't. Their best friends may be more on one side than the other, because Art Garfunkel's character has no idea, or only some idea, of what a bastard Jack Nicholson is.
Now, this is a preposterous situation. I'm sure none of you guys have ever been in this situation. Anything like this.
No, never.
I wouldn't say, well, man, best friends, maybe.
Best, or even just friends.
Yeah.
No, it made me tell a story about a situation where I said too much as a teenager with my friend about this girl, and the next thing I know, he's off with her. And
you just made me think of a story that I don't want to think about.
And then he died in a car accident 5 years later, and I was like,
A good riddance.
got what he deserved. What can I tell you? What can I tell you? These guys don't have that. They don't have that animosity.
Yeah.
So Adam, what do you think? What do you think about Colonel, about this movie?
So I just honestly kind of all said and done. I know we've got the early stages of it here in the background, but I found myself asking myself kind of who wins in the end and why is it so hard for people to be happy, frankly?
Yeah.
Because they're best friends, but they take two different paths in life. They ultimately keep meeting like once and again, but every different stage of it. But one goes a more conservative, traditional route. One stays wild child, true to his animal self, I guess. Both of the, I don't really buy that Art Garfunkel finds that true hippie inner peace in the end, circa 1970 or whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And
I don't think he does either.
Yeah.
I think it's there with the mustache and the fact that the girl he's dating is so much younger than he is.
Right.
But he's gonna sell it. He's gonna pretend with his friend like it's all roses.
Exactly. And Jack Nicholson, I mean, he has to pay for it in the end to even begin to get it up, it seems like.
Right.
So, it's fair. I've just all said and done, I found myself asking myself, why is it so hard just to be happy? Isn't that the human dilemma?
Oh, I know. And it really brings it into this New York context where a lot of the movie is spent in Jack Nicholson's character's apartment after he hooks up with Ann Margaret. And they're living together. Oh, Ann Margaret's just stunning, so stunning. And the apartment, it's a really great New York apartment and still kind of crappy, which I thought was interesting. They don't really have great furnishings. Their furniture's not great. They haven't bothered to paint it.
Yeah. It's not the Friends apartment.
No, it's not a nice apartment, but that's how people lived. And it's the early 70s where everything looked kind of grungy anyway.
Sure. And those scenes in there when he is just raging at her and yelling at her.
Oh my God.
So when you talk about how easily it could have been adapted as like a screenplay or as a stage play, I can absolutely see that playing out on Broadway or on the stage.
Absolutely.
Just two people tearing into each other, basically.
I think I want to check into it. I think it may have been written as a stage play, but the thing is, a lot of times you can say that about a film and it is almost slight, as if it could have been better, or an adaptation from a stage play to a film doesn't quite transfer. But this one comes off as an unusual movie, the way that it stays so long in these in these different parts. But it was a lot like Moonlight. Structurally, wasn't it? I don't know if you saw that, but Cole, do you think that's true? That movie, a lot of people I think said that it could have easily been a play. I think our critique was that we'd like it more as a play, maybe.
Well, what struck Catherine most about it was Art Garfunkel's performance, because I have to agree with her. I think that Art Garfunkel gives a better performance than Nicholson.
Whoa.
Which is, that's biting off a lot.
And Nicholson's not bad.
But no, he's not. But in the scenes where Nichols does the direct-to-camera stuff, and he really uses this technique very well a few times, where both Nicholson at separate times and Garfunkel are speaking directly to the camera. And with Nicholson, you feel like he's giving a monologue. With Garfunkel, you feel like, wait a minute, this guy's he's spilling his soul here.
I agree. I mean, it's kind of indicative of their characters, yeah?
It is indicative of their characters, yeah, certainly, because one has a lot more to hide. So I was curious about your impression, because you're an actor, and I think you hit the nail on that. I mean, Nicholson is just, his character is, a lot of it's just one note and really no filter and speaking to listen to the sound of his own voice, frankly, not necessarily to communicate with anyone. Yeah. Whereas
Garfunkel is just trying to find his way throughout this entire film. And like you said, I don't think he even has it at the very end, but that's something maybe that's a little more compelling to watch than someone just berating his partner.
Yeah. Although I have to say the scene where Nicholson blows up at Ann Margaret is really devastating and really great, because you're a little terrified, you're very uncomfortable watching it, but she's hanging in there with it, and you get that too, so you really get the female perspective of the whole thing.
Sure.
And I think back to what Mike was saying earlier about the relationship that Mike Nichols had with Elaine May as performers. I think that he was a great progenitor of the female perspective, because you wouldn't necessarily get from the setup of this movie that that you're going to really understand the female perspective. But you get it really clearly from at different times from different female characters.
Absolutely. I actually thought Candice Bergen's character was really strong.
Yeah.
Really
Very
strong. The
yeah.
way she kind of balanced and juggled both guys, but did it on her own terms. And I think there was a line kind of toward the beginning where, again, Jack Nicholson's just laying into her, and she says something like, I don't necessarily feel I'm doing anything wrong. I just feel like nothing. It's like absolutely nothing.
I don't have any emotions. Yeah.
But again, not just kind of giving in to him and what he wants, and I don't know, laying back and taking it, I guess. The way you say.
Can you relate to two guys who are so dialectically opposite being close like this, and almost these inextricable rotating suns around each other that they keep hovering back? Because normally you think people with a similar attitude sort of become friends and become close, but these guys can't separate. And do you have ways to relate to that? Does that make sense, or does it seem contrived?
It's an excellent question. I don't personally really have any relationships like that, so it's interesting enough that it makes me question their relationship and what is the nature of that attraction.
Well, I think, I'm the old guy in the room, so I've survived having a male best friend for 30 years, and it is something that you survive because obviously, no matter how compatible you are and however circumstance allows you to remain friends, there's going to be moments of strife. But I think it's interesting in the movie you get to see how Nicholson's character is able to keep secrets away from Garfunkel's character, and also how he maintains the relationship. There's a line in the end where he says, "Don't make me insult you," where that's enough for you to know that he's keeping himself in check. And I think that's, it takes, words, everything that you say in life, whatever you say to people, it's amazing the mark that you can have on people with what you say. Every word, I think when you're young, you kind of take for granted that you can just say whatever the fuck you want to anyone. And then, after...
You don't take your words seriously, you wouldn't expect anyone else to. You
maybe that's it. Around. Yeah, maybe that's it.
You're just feeling something and you throw it out there, but you become close with someone, and you have these weapons and you have these refined opinions about people, which though you love that person, you could say these devastating things and just
anything. And I think that's part of what's great about Pfeiffer's writing in this movie is there isn't one single line of dialogue in this thing that doesn't ring with an element of truth.
Nothing's wasted, right?
Yeah, it's all there. And I just wanted, because I pulled it up on Wikipedia, I just wanted to mention a little bit about, because it seems like it was just written to be a movie. I don't think it was ever a stage play. But the film did have legal problems, and I didn't know this until just this minute, but I did want to read it through just so everybody, listeners can get a little context for this. So the changes in morals of American society of the 60s and 70s and the general receptiveness by the public to frank discussion of sexual issues was frequently at odds with community standards. And at a theater in Albany, Georgia, in 1972, the local police served a search warrant and seized the film. And the theater manager, Jenkins, was convicted of the crime of distributing obscene material.
Wow.
So, if you can imagine, we watch this movie now and you think, yeah, this is it's honest, but it doesn't seem particularly racy. And so that thing went to the Supreme Court for distributing obscene material, and his conviction was upheld.
No way.
By the Supreme Court. And
I had no idea that Mike Nichols' work appeared in the Supreme Court.
It's insane, yeah. So in 1974, the Supreme Court found that the state of Georgia had gone too far in classifying the material as obscene.
Oh, so the Supreme Court of Georgia upheld it. Okay.
And classifying its material as obscene in view of the prior decision of Miller versus California. I don't know why it was in California. That's odd. Anyway, so they overturned the conviction, but that's crazy. Can you imagine? You're just some manager of a cinema, and they haul you off like that,
and you're
ruin your life. Some poor guy's life got ruined over this movie.
I got actual snuff films in my basement, and you're knocking me over Art Garfunkel.
Well, they're on YouTube now.
Yeah.
I guess, again, kind of the difference between what you expect when you hear the title Carnal Knowledge now.
I think that is why that movie was banned in Georgia, as people hadn't seen it. And I remember when I saw it, it's provoking because it's what you said, it's honest,
you've seen
it's
it before. You've seen it before.
Yeah.
When did you see it?
I saw it when I was 17 or 18.
And where were you? Where were you living?
I was
Nashville.
I was in Virginia. I was in high school, and it was.
Did you see it alone or with parents? Or
I watched it alone. I got it on Netflix. I watched it in my room, I think, and it wasn't sexy. There were, it wasn't when I watched striptease on Cinemax. And
I do feel like I could watch this with my parents if I had to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no problem.
It's almost harder to watch with your friends and your girlfriend than your parents. It's not provocative. It's just too real.
Yeah.
And I think it would still have quite a good reception and be edgy and is due for a re-release.
Well, it's the power of a great drama. But it's a great drama.
It would be PG-13 now.
Yeah.
Although there are a lot of, I can't remember, there are a lot of F-bombs in it. Like, is it that explicit? I don't think so, really.
I think you really hit it on the head there. It's what's most uncomfortable about it is their relationship, the relationship between friends, the relationship between girlfriends, and for that matter, like why these guys are so comfortable seemingly sharing women or girlfriends for that matter. Yeah. But that would be much more stressful on a relationship between friends or girlfriends than it would if you were sitting here watching with your parents. No big deal.
So I was thinking about it today, though. What happens to Ann Margaret? Because the last time we see her character, she's not in good shape. She's getting hauled off to the hospital. And then do we know how that went? Did we ever find out in the movie, in the story? Do you guys know?
I don't think so. I don't remember. I don't think so.
The last shout to her is really in his kind of homespun slideshow, right?
Yeah.
At the end where he's like, these are all my...
Yeah, which is so bizarre. It feels like something out of a Kubrick film.
Yeah.
It's stuck in there. You halfway think the movie's over.
I did think it was over when I was watching that.
And then you get this slideshow, and it's the opening credits of the slideshow, and he's got Art Garfunkel and Art Garfunkel is his doctor, and now he's pushing 50. And or maybe, I don't know, 40s, I don't know. But he's got this 18-year-old girl that's sitting there. And Nicholson now, his character, he's moved on to the 70s lifestyle where he's got the fancy couch and the big lamp that comes way over. And he's showing, who knows why he thinks this is an appropriate thing to do, but he's showing his friends all of the girls that he's been with since childhood and giving a little anecdote about each one. And so we, the audience, are taking through this tour.
But it's also such a perfect casting because it's the most Jack Nicholson-y thing ever.
He really is.
When he dies, they should play that scene.
Well, Jack Nicholson is such a tragic figure because he lost some really great women. He had Angelica Houston, and he had some really great women in his life, but he could never keep it in his pants, and so they all left him. And now Jack Nicholson is this old guy,
just kind of
who's living alone. He's just this poor, decrepit old man with nobody to look after him because he treated all his women so badly.
He's really the face of what happened.
He's the face of this movie.
Yeah, what happened if you just had crazy sex and did coke off of strippers for 50 years? And it's like, it doesn't go great. He's like a... There's these photos of him on a yacht from like 8 years ago, and it's just like a smug walrus. It's not great.
The fat man.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's also,
at least he's got his money, I suppose, and that's kind of the story here. He's a New York attorney. He does quite well for himself. I didn't know that the movie was gonna cover such a time span.
Yeah, if there had been one more scene in the film and like one more snapshot of their lives, later in life.
Uh-huh.
What do you think it would have? I mean, would it have been that Jack Nicholson exactly? What do you think?
Well, it's
A lonely old man.
It's interesting. I've been reading Art Garfunkel's autobiography.
Oh, really?
Which is a little disappointing because he's very he's very airy and artsy, and so he's not giving you a lot of concrete stuff out of his life.
I feel like Paul Simon's autobiography is going to be more nitty gritty. It's more.
I mean, it's an easy read. I'll give it that. It's certainly a breezy read, but it's a little too breezy because Art Garfunkel, as everyone has in life, obviously he has suffered a lot of tragedy and bad stuff and everything and good stuff and great stuff, phenomenal stuff. But he makes it seem that it's all, he errs on the phenomenal side. But anyway, yeah, to your question, Art Garfunkel, living in Carnegie Hill with his wife, who he really loves, and they've had a long, great relationship, and Jack Nicholson drying up as an old dude in California alone.
Their characters certainly seem to mirror at least the public personas of those people. So yeah, so maybe it is pretty true to life.
And Garfunkel stayed skinny.
They were typecast. He kind of looks like a Vietnam vet in the end of this movie, I think. But so he's a real New York character, right? Like, what's the story?
Art Garfunkel?
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my buddy, the friend of which I speak, my buddy Ted, his room at Columbia was Simon and Garfunkel's room, the dorm room, and so their names were scrawled in the closet.
Yeah.
And so it was whatever, just a little anecdote.
Is Paul Simon in movies? I think he's been in a couple movies, right?
I don't think so. I think Art Garfunkel's the guy who really took took the acting bug, and I think a lot of it had to do with Mike Nichols, because I think Mike Nichols saw in Art Garfunkel this innate presence.
There are people who certain directors know how to use and call it typecasting, but it actually lets them blossom in this amazing way.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll say, maybe if you knew Art Garfunkel, you'd be like, oh, he's just being Art. Like he's barely even trying. But it doesn't matter, because he's doing it in such a real, fascinating way that you never see. And when you have there's something interesting to me about musicians turned actors, your David Bowies. They're never normal type actors, but sometimes they actually turn in these much more real performances, or these much more nuanced, and they're very different types of people. They're performers, but they hit these different notes.
I've been chomping at the bit to bring up this movie. I'm curious if Adam has ever seen this movie, and it's called what is it? Bad Timing.
Bad Timing, no.
Bad Timing.
What's Bad Timing?
Bad Timing, A Sensual Obsession. It's a Nicholas Roeg, Australian filmmaker, movie from, I believe, 1980.
A Sensual Obsession.
Yeah.
Again with the sexy titles.
That's right. Bad. Well, and it gets really heavy, because Art Garfunkel plays a shrink, a psychiatrist, who also happens to be a necrophile.
Ooh. What is this movie?
Oh yeah,
next week, dude.
And Teresa Russell is the woman, and Harvey Keitel's in it too. So
what is this movie?
I know.
Dude?
So yeah, you really you put the bait on the hook, Mike, because
Cole, I want to hear your description of necrophile, just so we have it on the record.
Oh, he'll do it in spades.
I believe that is when one person has sex of any kind with a corpse.
Doesn't sound so bad when he says it.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Sex of any kind.
Well, I wrote a screenplay with my pal Ted called Rampage in Rego Park, and the opening scene, as Mike knows, involves an act of necrophilia, although it's a woman with a dead male corpse.
Well, that's more acceptable.
I think society can handle that a little easier.
Yeah. It's a page turner. As in, you're like, get me to the next page.
So is this a recurring theme in your work, or?
No, it's the only screenplay that I've co-written, and it still sits on the shelf, and I think it would have to go through another rewrite before it was going to be produced.
Well, so that's hitting the
probably a little dated now. We wrote it back in the days of the early 90s.
That story, those are the extremes of human sexuality. I think what is disturbing about this is it's actually kind of the norms of human sexuality that people don't want to talk about. I think that there's a couple scenes that are okay. What we'd call Art Garfunkel's characters now is like the nice guy, the guy who is not problematic with women, but actually is still kind of sex obsessed, misogynist, and a bit, he is being narcissistic in his desires, and he's not actually as good a guy as he's putting out there. And there's this dualism between him and what Nicholson is doing, and I think that's why they can't separate, is because they're defining themselves by each other.
And what I think is interesting about the movie is that Ann Margaret's character, who was a model or is a model in the early time that she's with Nicholson's character, and then he has her quit her job. She's really the most likable character in the movie. In a way, I think she's the protagonist for the movie, because even Candice Bergen's character,
she's one of them.
Yeah, she's one of them.
Yeah,
and so it's interesting how we see the movie, the way the story is told, where Ann Margaret's character, who's this needy female in early 70s society, trying to build a life, trying to have a relationship, and she can't. It's not allowed. It's not being allowed.
And Art Garfunkel doesn't get anywhere with her, correct?
No, she ODs.
Yeah. But on the other hand, also Candice Bergen's character, why do you suppose she's more attracted to Nicholson than Garfunkel? I guess from the get-go.
Well, I
love that whole part of the storyline, because it really. It's so accurate of the time, where it's Art Garfunkel plays the sincere guy. It's the third date, so you have to kiss me 5 times since you kissed me twice on the last date.
It's a little uncomfortable watching him justify why he should have her hand up her skirt.
It's so uncomfortable.
His hand up her skirt.
It's this Larry David, like, by the rules.
But those were the mores of the time. And so. I watched the Joan Didion documentary. It's a great Joan Didion documentary on Netflix right now, and her nephew Griffin Dunn directed it, and he's interviewing her, and he's asking her about her affinity for Jim Morrison, and she's so no nonsense, Oh, he's a bad boy, and I think that was very clearly the situation with Nicholson. And as soon as he knew that she was a bad girl, because he got enough information from Art Garfunkel's character, and so he seized on it right away, and he knew exactly how to target that spot. And it's like with the beer, how things are introduced. How is this beer introduced to you? Sure. And if it's introduced to you in this very sensual and direct way, you're going to respond that way. And if the attraction is presented to you in this old-fashioned, there's going to be a lot of steps before anything happens kind of way, then you're going to go down that little path. And that's how people are.
I get it. This is a big kind of bad beer, dark in color, 14% ABV. You think you're a badass if you just down it, right? Whereas if you're drinking some piss poor macro, mass-produced, whatever, not so appealing. In that case, I guess Art Garfunkel is the Budweiser. It's not a fair comparison. And Jack Nicholson is the Parabola style.
I think
there you go.
No, Art Garfunkel is the Fire Island sea salt ale.
Better.
He's a unique little thing, but he doesn't have a lot of intensity in the mouth area.
Well said. There's nothing Budweiser about Art Garfunkel.
No.
So do you think but where do you think it all plays out? If we were going to take these two characters and we were going to bring them current, do you think that Jack Nicholson is Harvey Weinstein and and Art Garfunkel is Stephen Colbert?
Well, I mean, it makes me question who Stephen Colbert is.
I don't think anyone's off limits now. Yeah. Question everyone, trust no one.
Yeah. There is absolutely a predator thing going on with Nicholson.
Absolutely,
right?
no question.
These are numbers to him. We already tried to hit here, and we just wound up saying that they're their modern selves. I want to ask: is there an essential flaw to the way? Is there something that they could have done differently? Like, it's not saying that there's. Maybe it's saying that there's this eroticism between them and they're like avoiding it. I think a simpler movie
Between
is
who?
like between the two guys. Like if maybe they're in love with each other, but it's honestly more complicated than that.
No, I think that it's more of where Jack Nicholson's character is a remora to
I don't know
to Art Garfunkel.
Remora.
Yeah, that's the little fish that swims on and lives off the back of the shark.
I didn't know that's a great little thing. Yeah,
I mean, you can't really say that Art Garfunkel's a shark, but he's the bait. And so, and you can tell there's so much in that opening scene. I just love that opening scene where Nicholson says, oh, you like her? I'll let you have her. Mm-hmm. And so I think that he's a guy he knows all the angles. He knows how to play every angle, and he's just always he's an opportunist. He's just always looking for a new angle.
Right. Well, Art is what we call like a beta cuck male, right? He's.
Yeah. I wouldn't call him a cuckold, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe.
Well, in the new parlance where it's just you're not assertive and being an asshole. And,
so you're either type A or not. He's so yeah, in this situation, Jack Nicholson clearly type A personality, Art Garfunkel clearly type B personality.
The alpha or the omega. Here's the thing, though. I mean, Nicholson is, I guess, up front a little more open and honest about who he is or who the character is. Art Garfunkel's character clearly more repressed. What's more dangerous in the long run? Because on some level, Garfunkel wants to be or wants to have what Nicholson has throughout the film.
What's more, and also, do you mean more dangerous to society or more dangerous to themselves?
Both.
So the question is Trump or Pence?
Yes. Oh, God. And unfortunately, there's no good answer to that question, so maybe there's not a good one to this either.
I had to think about it because I was thinking, is Art Bernie? Is Art no? But it's kind of it's the Pence thing. It's the I could never be alone with a woman who's not my wife. You're draping yourself with this virtue, but you're getting away with murder.
I think we're selling Nicholson's character short a little bit. I think there's more nuance to his character, and even though
he's likable because he's telling you what he's thinking, though, right? That's erotic.
And also he really has this attraction to women. It's a sincere thing, and he's not inflicting it on them. He really does appreciate.
But don't you think he's a sex addict?
He could very well be a sex addict.
But it's the way that like a heroin addict I know people who have addiction, and what's unique is they actually they love drugs. I met a woman who was a drug counselor, and she's like, I knew I had to get sober, but I still there's one thing that I loved more than anything else, and it was drugs. So I became a drug counselor so I could talk about drugs all day. People love the things they're addicted to in sort of a genuine way.
All right, let's talk about you guys to think of your favorite scene in the movie, because my favorite scene in the movie is when Ann Margaret's character, beautiful redhead, great body, she's making her play. They've been living together for a little while, and she's making, I don't even know if they are quite living together. Yeah, no, they're not living together, and she's making her pitch to Nicholson about moving in, and he goes with it a little bit. I think it's something we should think about. Take a few days and think about, because there's a lot to this. And objectively, he's not saying anything improper, but she sees right through it, and she says something to the effect of, she calls him a prick. Mm. So his methodology is not as clean as he imagines it to be, because she sees right through it. Nonetheless, she gets her way. And I just love that scene, because you can see him, you can see the gears turning, you can see him lying, but he's doing it on her terms. but it doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see him clearly trying to weasel out of it, and you could argue she wins in that scene. But I guess what's so sad in the long run is even though she might win or get what she wants then and there, you see how just kind of dilapidating, deteriorating the lifestyle is if once you're just living with someone, don't have necessarily a sense of purpose or work, and she just kind of falls apart in the bedroom, essentially.
Yeah. Well, she does take up photography. Because we see all
it's good to have a hobby.
We see all the stuff. So she has a hobby, but yeah, that's not enough.
Yeah.
She was. All right. So Adam, what favorite scene?
You know, I might have mentioned them already. I mean, I love the slideshow toward the end. Just
Dude,
because
I was gonna say that.
I like the sight gag. I mean, I thought the movie was over and these were the credits about to start. And again, it's just like you said, it's a perfect moment for Nicholson. And I mean, I know Jack Nicholson as like maybe first and foremost as the Joker or from The Shining. So it's great for me to go further back and get a further sense of who he was and what led him from then to now. So seeing him just relish his own conquest slide by slide in the living chair in his New York successful apartment. I mean, I thought that was great. And also the scene where he is kind of, we'll say, trying to castrate and guilt and shame Candice Bergen, saying, "Don't you feel bad for doing this?" And she says she feels nothing. I thought that was a great moment of her standing up to him. But I've got to give it to the slideshow. I mean, I'm going to try to make my own after seeing this.
Softball, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say the slideshow just because it turns him into this strange taxidermist type expert showing it's like or someone who's talking about their recent vacation, you know, and they don't even to Niagara Falls. It's like the vibe of it. I think the hardest ones to watch for me, which make
the favorite scene, good, man. Your favorite scene.
Well, they're my favorite because they're the hardest to watch.
Yeah.
It's these early Garfunkel scenes where he's with Bergen and he's
in the woods.
And all these things he's coaxing her into this affection and he's being a nice guy. He's doing it the right way, but it's
not working.
It's not that it's not just that it's not working. It's that
it's the wrong approach. It's so much more manipulative than what Nicholson is doing, which is like, hey, so I'm trying to fuck you. You know, to do this society, like you're being a bad citizen. If we've been on this many dates, you're leading me on. You know, it's so. It's showing the dark side of what is the polite way to approach women that I think is a very tough thing to watch and is important. But again, it's what you're talking about is of the time. I grew up in the 70s and I remember all these rules and stuff about how you were supposed to go on dates and how many dates and everything. And
so that's so funny. It's because dates seem so genuine, but it's not about like when then you figure out if you really like the person. It's like, no, you put in 3 dates and she touches the tip, you know?
I have to say that when I first moved to New York, I was footloose and fancy free, as they say.
And you're gonna have to translate that.
And here we go. I did a speed dating thing because I was just so curious about the process. I really wanted to just what's it like to sit down with 15 women for 3 minutes each?
So you joined Tinder.
I'm
translating. I'm translating.
Okay, this is much better than Tinder because it's all real time.
I bet. Yeah.
You know, it's face to face, and but I went in with the idea that it was more of a social experiment on my part. I didn't really have that intent at that moment that I was going to walk away from it with a conquest. So, you know, I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to have the experience. But when I came away from it though, I had that experience of out of those 15 women, realizing, that was the one who was most into me, and that was the one that if I wanted to pull the trigger, that you know I could pull the trigger. But I didn't pull the trigger because I just wanted the experience.
Ooh.
You know?
Wait.
I did it.
You just made it clear to 15 women that you could get out of here right now and we could make this happen?
I did it, you know, because I'm an actor too, and so I wanted to have that experience as an actor of that social interaction. I really did. I know it sounds completely unrealistic, but it's true.
Well, 15 women back to back, I'm sure an experience we'd all love to have, but hey.
But it's just it's a 3-minute conversation. So it's a dream. It's just one of those idealized things that if somebody said, "Hey, would you like to do this for kicks?" and you go, "Yes, sign me up." Why would I not want to do that?
So what would Cole, like circa 1971, think when he heard the term carnal knowledge?
Well, yeah. Well, that's when
Versus now, for
That's
that
when I was
matter.
8 years old. Well, no, it was something adult. When I was that age, I knew that it was something that I could not even pretend to. To see or to witness. I could not be that audience.
And talking about the whole second, third, fourth base thing, I guess those might have been the most uncomfortable scenes for me to watch, just in terms of, okay, we've been on 3 dates, my hand's up your shirt, fourth date, what are you going to do with your hands?
Because it's a way to institutionalize sex expectations, that have nothing to do with you liking each other.
And what's weird is, and Mike and I we talked about this movie Dogtooth, this Greek director Yorgos Lanthimos.
Coming out soon, you guys. We record these out of order.
Yeah. And so this social indoctrination that happens, just what's the word, through osmosis, that just happens to all of us. And I learned all those rules as a kid just from, you're just in the culture. You just hear your parents talking and you hear, watch television or whatever. It's so bizarre to me how information was processed in this era as compared to the way information is processed now, because I can't even imagine what it would be like to be an 8-year-old in 2017 and hear carnal knowledge.
Sure.
It would sound very boring, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It would. It really would. It wouldn't sound enticing at all. To me, there was, they had like a fetish element to it. Like, ooh, that's,
It was enough that it was banned and went to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
That's fascinating that people had much of an allergic reaction. I guarantee you they didn't see this film. You don't watch this film and go ban it. Like, there's some boobs in it, but
no.
In 71,
that was the title. I'm sure that's what that's what lit them up.
There has been more nudity at this point in films. 71. I mean, this is not that risque.
The 70s were all about nudity.
It was
very restrained nudity. You get like a little side boob from Ann Margaret, and that's it. Butt.
Why is it called carnal knowledge? Why the title?
So the carnal knowledge, right, is just sexual knowledge of a person, right? To say that you've had sex with them, but but that doesn't answer it at all.
Like this movie in particular.
I think it was Jules Pfeiffer using, it's something that's tittillating, a little bit of titillation.
I was going to say something smart ass marketing, because like we're just saying nothing like the Supreme Court saying you're not allowed to see it to get people out.
Absolutely.
This movie made some money. This movie made $30 million, I believe.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a ton of dough back in that day.
Yeah.
That's a blockbuster.
Yeah.
Wow.
So no such thing as bad
running
publicity?
out to see it.
No. Bad publicity is the best publicity.
Did this movie come out before Catch-22? Let me check that. That's a good question there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Catch-22 is in black and white, I believe. It doesn't really tell you anything. But I would love to know the Mike Nichols filmography.
And what are some of the other most notorious 70s movies, I guess?
The most notorious 70s movies.
Deep Throat.
Well,
Deep Throat,
that's an
classic.
X-rated porn,
But that was the bridge to mainstream. That was the movie that bridged porn to the mainstream.
Well, that's an interesting thing, right? Because now the bridge is pretty severed. This movie actually would probably be an R-rated film, definitely. You never see porn films get any sort of distribution like Deep Throat did.
No.
And films are more conservative now than they were by 1983 might have been the laxest that films ever were.
Do you know that no stores in New York City are allowed to show anything sexually explicit? You can't walk into a store and have, like even a sexually explicit magazine in view.
As of today?
Can I guess who made that rule? Giuliani?
No. As of this past June.
Get the fuck out.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, where do you think this is all coming from? It's real estate. There are no more porn stores in Manhattan.
Because the rent's too damn high?
No, because they shut them down because they made it illegal for them to show anything sexually explicit.
Yeah,
as a way to seize that property.
Boring.
That's the interesting story of New York, right? Is it was a dilapidated shithole, and then the porn industry brought some capital into it, and then capital really showed up and kicked the porn out again.
Yeah.
Over the course of 20.
So, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was Nichols' first movie in '66, The Graduate '67. Catch-22, 1970, also starring Art Garfunkel, and 1971 for this movie, Carnal Knowledge.
So Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is seen as absolute classic, not a great film. It's amazing.
So rest in peace, Edward Albee.
Rest in peace, Edward Albee.
And clearly a piece of work that was a stage play before it was a film.
And the cast of that's fucking incredible. Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah.
How does a first time director get that? Had he done a lot of TV? I mean, I know he's a known comic, but how do you get Burton and Taylor in an Albee play, your first movie out? That's incredible.
Because he was a New York guy. You know, we were talking earlier, you know, Mike and I were talking about how, you know, wouldn't it be great, you know, we were talking about how Siskel and Ebert started out doing, what was it?
Public access.
Public access. Like, that's how do you know this, Adam? That's how
their humble beginnings? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that was the story, was that they were just, they came up with, you know, we're going to be two film critics talking about movies on public access. And that's how the whole Siskel Ebert and then, you know, Roger Ebert explosion, all that stuff happened.
Fantastic.
And you know, it's all about where you are at the right time.
Yeah.
And he was clearly somebody who was really deeply in the theater scene of New York City in the 60s, when everything was possible. Cassavetes was making, you know, movies on a dime, and everybody, you know, there was a community.
But Virginia Woolf feels like a studio film. It feels a bit old Hollywood. It's black and white. It's excellent.
It's also brutal. It's such a brutal movie to watch.
Yeah.
I would have to steel myself to sit down and watch it.
The Graduate is full blown of the era of Easy Riders.
And also,
it's new.
It's Simon and Garfunkel.
It's new Hollywood, and it is exclusively Simon and Garfunkel. Mrs. Robinson is written for that movie. It was supposed to be Mrs. Roosevelt.
That's right.
And
That's right.
It was about Eleanor Roosevelt, and
he talks about that in the book.
They kept the lyrics, but they changed the name to Mrs. Robinson.
To a much better name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roosevelt. So now we know how Art got this part then, yes?
Yes, he is. He gave his songs for Mad Cheap in Graduate, and then 2 movies later, he's in Catch-22 and then Carnal Knowledge.
All right, so Adam, we want to know about your acting career, because we both watched your short film. I had already watched it. I made Mike watch it.
That's my neighborhood, man.
Before you showed up.
You live in Ridgewood?
Yeah, I live in Ridgewood. That bar, my recent ex-girlfriend, like 2 girlfriends ago, we had I'm just
2
debating.
girlfriends ago.
Yeah, I'm debating how much is that. Anyway, at one point I threw up in that urinal trough, and at another point in the night I had my first kiss with her, and I'll let you decide what order those things happened in.
Well,
in that bar, in Bierleichen.
If the kiss was after, I hope you at least had a beer in between.
I think I had a Bratwurst.
A Bratwurst. Oh man. That's great. Well, meant to be. I'm glad you saw the.
Yeah,
the
we're still together. No,
I love it. I really appreciate you taking a moment to watch it.
Oh yeah, no. I had already watched it, but I wanted to make sure that Mike watched it.
The place called Bierleichen. It's on YouTube. Where can you see it?
So it's Bierleichen Das Movie. It's a short film. It's a 6.5 minute commitment. It's on YouTube, so you can watch it online
with the great Kate Dulcich.
Yes, indeed, the bartender extraordinaire at the Blind Tiger. Mm-hmm.
Who's off having a baby now?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I invited her out to do metal yoga yesterday, and she said she was, 8.5 months pregnant, so declined.
Can I get a +1 to that?
But so part of the idea was to make a short film and cast people that work entirely in the craft beer industry on one side of the bar or the other, and that's what we did. But Bierleichen, I went to shortly after they opened, and there was kind of a trauma-themed event happening there.
Yeah, cool.
I'd love to know what you guys think about trauma, for that matter. But
Early trauma is awesome.
Yeah.
No question.
I know what it is, and I've seen some, but I don't have.
Oh,
I don't know that much. We got to delve.
We got to do Toxic Avenger.
I'll definitely listen
Yeah.
to that podcast.
Yeah. We have to do it. There you go. So we have two missions from this that we've pulled from this mission. From this podcast, we have to do a Toxic Avenger, and we have to do Bad Timing, Essential Obsession.
Sounds
Nice.
good.
All right. So anyway, go on, Adam.
Well, there was a trauma-themed event happening, and that was my first time visiting the bar. They had the sign up about beer corpses in the bathroom.
So this is what Bierleichen means.
Exactly.
Beer corpse.
So Bierleichen translates to beer corpse in German. It's for Oktoberfest revelry and people passed out on the field outside the tent. So you're a beer corpse, right? So from that, the idea came pretty naturally about green beer turning people into green zombies and casting it with people that work in the beer business.
Love it.
And also, as I wrote it, a little bit of tongue in cheek, a little bit of commentary on my own time working in the beer business, just chasing like what is new for the sake of being new and different, you know.
So what are you doing now? Are you doing anything in the beer business right now?
Well, I am freelancing at the moment.
Okay.
So I went on from Bierleichen with the same crew, and we're developing a show called The Six Most Metal Breweries. So
Cool.
kind of further, zombies aren't part of this equation, but we are kind of building upon this foundation of beer and metal. And that's why I was doing metal yoga yesterday. We shot that and brought a bunch of beer people in to do it as well. Got the heart pounding and sweating out a little bit of booze.
Where's that? I've heard of this metal yoga. A couple places. Is this in Brooklyn? Where is
This
it?
was at St. Vitus Bar, where I hang my horns, and it's led by someone named Saskia Thode. I'm not saying that correctly, but she runs a company called Metal Yoga Bones and teaches metal yoga. And we're working with KCBC, Kings County Brewers Collective in Bushwick, and brewing a beer that we're going to launch at St. Vitus. And, you know, every good show needs a little bit of comic relief, we'll say. So the thought of bringing a bunch of brewers and beer people in to do metal yoga fit the bill nicely.
Can I ask? I was at a small shop that sold craft beers, and they had this funny sign that said, "No, we don't sell this beer, this beer, this beer, this beer. They're really hard to come by." And they were these hyper local beers, and so it was clear that people had been coming in and saying, "Can I get this beer?" And they're like, "No, it sells out too fast." So, what is the short distribution cycle of these, like this beer that you're talking about developing? There really are a lot of beers that are probably excellent, but they're really tough to come by, and there are a few places to get. What's the life cycle on these hyper macro hyper micro beers? I don't really know much about what it's like to make a very small batch beer.
Sure. I mean, you know, what's interesting is even the smallest breweries are gaining increased distribution, and those beers are becoming more and more acceptable and likewise less hard to find. So I think the greater question around that is, does scarcity equal good? Does rarity equal, you know, does it live up to the hype? Because it used to be you had to maybe, you know, go out of your way to hunt down these beers, and people putting up signs about it, I think is just saving them time and frustration, frankly. New York is the world stage, and everyone wants a moment here. So everyone wants to get their beer distributed here or sold here.
I lived in Nashville for a couple of years, and there's a couple of breweries, and you have this pride to it, and you go to the brewery, and you drink and you like it, and then it's nothing like going to another city and getting that same beer and being like, oh man, it's not that great.
It's kind of like your local sports team, right? You support it because it's local, but at a certain point you maybe realize local is not inherently good or justifies the chase, the mania, the hype. And again, that is a big part of what Bierleichen Das Movie was about, frankly, that and just kind of a little love letter to some of my favorite heavy metal bars around town. So short answer, I mean, as an actor, I'm just trying to really kind of create my own content. And, you know,
that's what you have to do these
brand.
days, right? That's the whole, that's everybody's struggle.
Exactly.
You got to create your own mountain and climb it and prove it, and then hopefully something good will come out at the end.
Yes, indeed.
You have a website, right?
I do. It is adambzuniga.com. Middle initial is B for Burford, believe it or not.
Can you spell it for us?
Adam, A-D-A-M, middle initial B for Burford, B-U-R-F-O-R-D. Last name Zuniga, Z-U-N-I-G-A, adambzuniga.com. Thank you for the plug.
Oh,
nice.
Of course.
Yeah, no, that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah.
Cool. So everybody, stop what you're doing right now, because I know you're already in front of your computer. Go to adambzuniga.com right now, just for the fun of it. You got none better to do.
Watch Bierleichen.
You're listening to the podcast. Oh, by the way, all these podcasts are if they're not available on YouTube yet, we're feeding them in. Where we have 80 episodes to upload, and I'm working on that. So, you're going to be able to hear this on YouTube, and while you're listening to it there, you can just open up another tab and go to adambzuniga.com and check it out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening. You can check out Carnal Knowledge. It's streaming for $2.99, a mere $2.99.
You got that in your couch, fellas.
It is a classic. It's a 5-star movie. I highly recommend it. I can't believe that it took me 54 years before I saw it, but I'm so glad that I did. And please remember that you can always pledge your monthly support to Le Grande Bouffe, The Big Feast, by going to colesmithy.com and finding my Patreon link, where you can get rewards for contributing $5, $10, $20, whatever dollars per month. And remember to turn your cell phones off. Just turn your cell phones off. You'll feel better when you do. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.